Grab your cocktail and get ready for this episode of the Old Fashioned Masonic Podcast. Welcome to the Old Fashioned Masonic Podcast, where we talk all things Freemasons while drinking an old fashioned. I'm Brian, and guess what? You guys have heard us talking about Florida and all the nonsense. Well, the guy I have here is from Florida. So I'm going to let you Steve, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. And actually, I'm going to introduce you, but I'm going to let you tell the story. So, Steve Clark, welcome to the Old Fashioned Masonic Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
So, like we do on our episodes, we like to know as much about the man as we do the Mason. So let's slide some Masonry to the side, my friend, and let's tell the world who Steve the man is.
Yeah, I mean, not much to tell. I'll give you the wave tops, as we say in the military.
I like it.
Yeah, so just real brief, I'm not quite a Florida native, but almost. I moved here in 1970. Went to school here, grew up here, married here, had my kids, got my grandkids here, worked here, joined the military from here, came back here. Fast forwarding to when I was a real young man, I joined Masonry. My wife has been with me through the whole journey, so she's just as much into Masonry as I am. Her grandfathers were all past so-and-sos, and myself, I've been around it for about 50 years that I can remember. Yeah, just I'm a conservative guy, and like if you've heard some of my recordings in the trial, I even say in there at one point, first and foremost, I'm a patriot of this country, and then father, son, brother, wife, brother, that kind of thing, and then further down the line, there's the political arena, there's the fraternal and social arena, and things like that, but.
Well, let's come back. You left some big things out here, and so my job as a host is to make sure that everyone really knows who you are. So you kind of brushed through it. So let's come back.
Okay.
You were in the Navy.
Yep.
For 25 years.
25 years.
You're CB.
CBs.
All right. So tell the world that doesn't know what is the abridged version. What's a CB? What do they do?
Yeah, so well, just take you back. Me personally, I didn't join the military till I was almost 30. I came home from work one day. I'd already had a family, a career, kids, everything, a home, and I you always hear ministers say that they've been called to serve, right? Yeah. So and that's the way I was feeling, about things in the country and all. And I felt like there was something I had to do. And I came home one day, and I still remember going into the kitchen, my wife standing there, and I said, I think I'm going to join the military. And she didn't even hesitate. She just said, okay. And so I did. And I was almost 30 years old. And I ended up going into the CBs. By trade, I did construction, heavy equipment operations. So it was just kind of a natural thing for me to go to the CBs. And for those that don't know, the CBs started in 1942, post Pearl Harbor. And it was really a chain of action, chain of events, a reaction to that bombing, that we needed the men to go in that were already trained to build runways, fuel depots, piers, that kind of thing. And we didn't have 10 years to train young guys. So the government, the military went out and basically recruited entire construction companies and brought them into the military. And so now they had, the men that did the Hoover Dam and the Brooklyn Bridge and those guys, and they became what was today is known as the CBs. So it's a construction engineering force, but it's also a combat force.
Yep.
They're usually attached to the Marine Corps when we go in. And we go into these nasty forward area places that nobody wants to be there. And we have to go in there and we lay down infrastructure and do horizontal construction and vertical construction, and basically make life a whole lot better for the warfighter and we make it easier to get supplies in and out, to move convoys and things like that. And then in the process, we're also combat trained, and they are a frontline unit that a lot of people just never really hear about.
I wanted to make sure I I know what the CVs do, and I'm glad that you had an opportunity because a lot of people think, oh, they're like in the Army, it's the equivalent to combat engineers, and
Yep.
there's but CVs there's a little more depth to that. There's a little more I don't want to say a better skill set, but it's different, right? It's different but the same. So you left as a command master chief.
That was my last tour. I'd been promoted to Master Chief in 2018, and then I screened for a command position and was promoted again, selected and promoted up to Command Master Chief. And my last tour a duty was Command Master Chief of a CB battalion in California.
Love it. So I'm setting this stage because we're about to tell the listeners a story. We know the story,
Yep.
but we're about to tell the story. So we push this to the side. Congratulations on a 37-year marriage, by the way. That's awesome. It seems to be an anomaly today.
Yep.
So
Nowadays.
I'm approaching 30 years, so I'm super excited about that. But yeah, definitely an anomaly. So let's slide that to the side, my friend. So walk me. Listen, I have this is no exaggeration, folks. I have 3 pages of your Masonic bio. So we'll stay high level because we really want to tell the story, but give us kind of a high level of your Masonic journey from beginning up until 4 months ago.
Okay. Well, I'll give you the exact beginning. Again, I always wanted to, when I was a boy, little boy, my grandfather, I was raised by my grandparents, and my grandfather was a Mason. And I had the just grand opportunity. I was a past master of the same lodge he was past master in. So I had that opportunity. But back when I was a small boy, I saw him interact with uh, Masonic giants. And I didn't know they were Masonic giants at the time, but
Hmm.
I do now. Later on, I did. But my grandfather was not a highly educated man. He left high school and went right into the Navy for the war in the 40s. But he was well respected in Masonry, and I saw him interacting with these Masonic giants, and they afforded him a level of respect that I was like, wow, these guys, they want to hear what he has to say. He's not, a business tycoon or anything like that, but these men wanted to hear what he had to say. And I was just impressed and moved by that. So I started 10, 12 years old looking into Masonry and reading about it. Next thing you know, I hear that they're starting a DMLA chapter where I live, and I'm like, hey, I'm there, and I ended up becoming a charter member of that chapter. Worked my way through the offices and became a past master counselor. Then in the state of Florida, you couldn't join Masonry at 18 at that time. It was 21.
Okay.
So at 18, I'm moving on, going to work and other things. I'm really not active with DMLA anymore, but I was ready to be a Mason.
Right.
And but I had to wait till I was 21. So this is where I kind of got my first exposure to the digest, the Masonic Law of Florida. My grandfather had a digest, and I started reading it when I was like 18 or 19. And I found a section in there on membership that said that I could apply to the local lodge when I was 20, 6 months before you turn 21. So down to the day, I submitted my petition to the local lodge 6 months before I turned 21. Fast forward 2 days after my 21st birthday, I took my EA degree. Roughly a Masonic month later, the Fellowcraft. Roughly a Masonic month later, my Master Mason. And then from there, it was like wildfire. I learned the EA lecture a couple months after that. I learned it in like 20 days because the local lodge here needed somebody, and I, volunteered to do it. Uh, it went right into York Rite, Scottish Rite, and then from there, you name it. I did just about every Amaranth, even Shrine, all these other organizations. Um, ended up becoming very active in New York, right? I felt um, drawn to it because it was very reminiscent, as most York Rite Masons will tell you, it was very reminiscent of the Blue Lodge. In fact, it's kind of like a continuation of the Blue Lodge
It's the
story.
most natural transition or progression. It really is.
Well, and if you think about it, technically, Blue Lodge or symbolic Masonry technically is a York Rite body.
Right.
So, anyways, I became active in the York Rite. Was no time at all. I ended up going through all the chairs and all the bodies. Became a KYCH. Got into the Grand Line. I was appointed to the bottom of the Grand Line for the Grand Council, and worked my way up there, and then became Grand Master of the Grand Council of Royal and Select Masters of the state of Florida in 2003. And then that was about the time I had 2 months left of my year. I was called to active duty to go deploy to Iraq. So 2 months before I turned over the reins of my administration over to the next guy, I had to go overseas. And then, yeah, I mean, it just goes, like you said, it's 3 pages. I mean,
Crazy.
Royal Order of Scotland, Red Cross of Constantine, um, just on and on and on. And yeah, uh, yeah,
It's one of the most impressive. So those who don't know, before we do this in our prep, we ask for kind of the Masonic bio, and it kind of helps build questions and know where to go. So we're not asking, questions that are just totally idiotic. And it's again, this isn't in giant font. This is legit 3 pages, so there's no exaggeration. It's really interesting. So I'm going to segue. I'm going to take a little liberty here. So you were doing everything, then you got called to combat, right?
yeah.
So did you ever think, segue, did you ever think that you were going to have combat inside Masonry ever?
No, and it was really shocking because, and I will say that resume you have, that 3 page bio, that's a 35-year Masonic career.
Yes.
And in 35 years, I have not personally been associated with any sort of Masonic trial. We've had them, my lodge has had them, but they not, I was not involved in any of it. There was other lodges around Florida. I always heard about them, and it gets around. But I never thought in a million years that I would receive a letter from the Grand Secretary saying I'm having unmasonic conduct charges filed against me.
So let's freeze you there. So let's
Yeah,
catch everyone up. So, as Steve said, he got a letter. He got served up with some Masonic charges. So, what was take the emotion out?
yeah.
What did they hit you for? What did they say they hit you for?
Yeah. So generally speaking, the charge was unmasonic conduct. But now you get into the specifics and what chapters of the
Yep.
digest that I supposedly
Allegedly.
violated.
Yeah.
Right. So it all stems back to this current Grand Master went into office May of last summer, 24. When he got into office, he really started, the analogy I use was he was like a blind dog in a meat house. He got in there and he just started doing crazy things and saying crazy things that he was going to do. And somewhere around the end of July, he issued a ruling and decision I believe it was ruling and decision number 2, that he was looking at around 70 plus organizations that were Masonic in nature, but that were not Masonic organizations, that were not, basically, they didn't carry the blessing of the Grand Lodge and the Grand Master. So in his ruling decision, he says, if you're a member of these organizations, then you have 2 options. You either, and this is, I'm paraphrasing his
Sure.
ruling and decision, RD number 2. You either have to sever your membership from that organization, or the organization needs to take steps to come forward and basically kiss the ring and ask for permission to exist. Well, the one organization that I belong to was the Widow's Sons motorcycle organization. It actually started here in Florida. The grand chapter of the Widow's Son started just south of me. And now it's in like 70 countries. It's all over the world. We have, literally thousands upon thousands of members in it. We do good things. I mean, we're all Masons.
Right.
And this was really that R&D number 2, and I don't care what they say, it was directed at the Widow's Sons. The Widow's Sons this year, last year, the year before haven't been looked on favorably. We've had some brothers in the motorcycle organization that are a little colorful, and they've done some things that are questionable. I'll give you that. However, this R&D number 2 was, in my opinion, it was focused at that organization. So then that was at the end of July. In the first week of August, I'm a Facebook guy. I get on Facebook and I talk about all kinds of social issues, government issues. I put all kinds of stuff out there, have for years. Like I said, I'm a patriot and I don't like some of the things that go on in our country and our government. But anyways, I digress. I put a statement out there, a post on Facebook, and it started out that I was making a comparison, the whole thing, I was making a comparison to a fact or facts in history. And it starts out talking about the history of Freemasonry and Nazi Germany and also Nazi Europe, essentially 30s and 40s of Europe, that when Hitler condemned Masonry, it didn't go away. Masonry went underground. They went secret. They went, more than they were. And they put their Masonic emblems aside and they started wearing the forget-me-not, as you know, the history on. And that's what I talked about. And then, so at the end of my post, I said in my post that I will remove all Masonic emblems from my motorcycle apparel. And I said that I guess I'll just be a modern day outlaw Mason under a modern day Hitler. And they filed unmasonic conduct charges me because they interpreted that I was calling the Grand Master Hitler.
So let me ask you this: who actually filed the charges on you? This is an important question.
Yeah, so I actually brought that up in my trial. I asked, is my accuser in the courtroom? And they said no. And I said, well, who is my accuser? And they said, most worshipful Don Cowart. And I said, well, according to the civil law, I'm allowed to face my accuser. And I said, not only civil law, but constitutional law, Amendment 6 of the Constitution says I have the right to face my accuser. And why is my accuser not here? And he's like, I don't know. We don't know where he is. And I said, well, who actually did the accusation? I said, I can't believe it was Don Cowart out there looking at, 10,000 Facebook pages of Masons trying to do a witch hunt. I think somebody brought it to his attention and then he ran with it. So I don't know. I don't know who actually brought it to his attention. Yeah, it doesn't matter. I mean, these guys they're a bunch of clowns. We're supposed to follow the digest. They do not follow the digest. I mean, obviously, according to my trial and what happened, they didn't follow the digest. They just don't care.
So let's set this stage. So for those who have not been a part of a Masonic trial, seen one, heard it. So you're summoned, you get your charges, and then you are summoned to meet on X date to X place. Did they allow you counsel?
So what they do is they sent me via email and snail mail. They send me my charges. They send it. It's signed by Don Cowart. They send those to me. Once I get them, it says in those charges that I have 10 days. I have a 10-day window to respond to those charges. And it goes on to talk about I'm entitled to counsel and all of that. So I did respond to the charges. I sent an unofficial response via email. And then I sent an official response that basically went charge by charge in my denial of them and why.
Right.
So then they tell me the trial will be at a such and such date at a certain time on at a certain location. And funny enough, all the other crap that's going on here in Florida with the Masonic home, that's where they did the trial, at the Masonic home. That's a little ironic, but so yeah, I go to the trial. One of the first things they ask me when they go into session is they ask, "Do you have counsel?" And basically, I told the chairman, I said, "Mr. Chairman, I've been a Mason for 35 years. I'm a past grand presiding officer of this grand jurisdiction, and I know the Masonic laws of the digest better than most people. I don't need counsel. I'm going to represent myself."
In retrospect, before we get to the kind of the end of the story, in retrospect, would you do it the same if you were all
Yep, I sure would. And I'll
okay?
tell you why, because I don't think it'll make a difference. I
Right.
think that if Gandhi himself had gone into there, they would have found him guilty. And honestly, I think, Brian, they have this already done. They had it all. This thing was rigged. It was a kangaroo court from the beginning. I think that they were told to, this is what I want you to do. There was a trial the morning of my trial. That guy was a much younger guy, both age and in Masonry. And I don't know what he did specifically, but generally it was unmasonic conduct. They gave him a suspension of 6 months. And I honestly, in comparison to suspension indefinitely for me,
Right.
and I honestly think that Don Cowart told his henchmen, and let's face it, all these guys, and those are my words, henchmen, right? So
Right.
all these guys are appointed by him. They serve at his will and pleasure. You know, he's the force behind it all. And I think he told them, look, slap this guy on the wrist. He's young in Masonry. We can teach him a lesson with a slap on the wrist. This guy over here, he's 35 years in. He knows the business. And I think that he told him basically go in there and shoot a hostage and send a message. And the message is coming out of there that they want to be is that, see, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what kind of resume you have. We're in control. You step in line and do what we tell you, or you're going to get the same as Right Worshipful Clark.
So let me ask you a question. Let's go back to the post. So you make the post. I'm going to pull all my square and compasses off my cut. I'm going to be an outlaw Mason, and I'm not going to fall under some sort of tyranny. We'll just go with that, right? At any time, did a DGGM, a Grand Lodge officer, did someone call and say, "Bro, you might want to take that down"? Did you ever get that in advance?
I did not, and I know. Yeah, I mean, it goes back to our own ritual. It says, you know, we're supposed to whisper wise counsel into the ear of an erring brother. I didn't get a single phone call, and I'm not pointing a finger at any of my
Sure. No,
brothers.
I don't
But
think anybody is. I'm just
yeah,
trying to kind of paint
I
a
don't
story.
want it to come out like that. But I didn't get anybody call me and say, hey, you know, you need to take this down. You need to rethink what you're posting. You know, yada yada. Now
You know,
I
because I ask it this way, Steve, because it's so here's the picture. It's like, oh, that's Steve. He posts what's on his mind, he lays it out there, whether it's local, whether it's government, whatever it is going on, he's gonna put his point because that's just Steve, right? And at some point, that's why I asked the question, because obviously on this podcast, we go up to the line a lot, right?
yeah.
And you know, we try, try to be smart and do different things. So, everyone innocent until proven guilty type thing. Um, and there's times where somebody might call and say, "Woo, you sure you want to do that?" So,
Yeah.
but that was the reason I asked that question, because if it were me and I saw something that's like, we got kind of a tough regime right here, I would have picked up the phone and said, "Man, you might think that through and do what you want, but this is what it looked like. This wasn't your intention, but the optics looks like this, right?"
Sure.
So
Right.
that's why I asked the question, if somebody said, hey, this, and you said, no, middle finger to the air, I'm still doing it, which I knew that was the answer, but I wanted the world to understand that.
Yeah, nobody called me. In fact, I did get people, reach out to me and say, "Hey, man, right on. This is, yeah, you're absolutely right." That were supportive of it. But no, nobody called me and give me counsel to say, "Hey, man, you want to rethink this." And I will say this: after the trial, I did get some people call me and say, I saw that when that post went up, I thought about calling you and tell you to take it down. So it's kind of fun. I'm like, well, it's too late now. So
Sure, sure. And I think here's the other message, Masons. If you're not a Mason, set to the side, don't pay attention right now. But Masons, sometimes in retrospect we see things too, but if there's a time where if you see a brother that's potentially put himself in harm's way, you gotta pick, even if it's not the case, you have to say, bro, what in sweet baby Jesus are you doing? Right?
yeah,
And because we'll respect it more from a fellow brother than we will some dude off the street, right? Because we know we're looking out for each other. It's like, I get it. The emotions are there. You might want to take that deep breath, right? And,
yeah.
and that just didn't happen. And so I guess there's going to be many lessons right here, but part of the lesson is, guys, if you see that, we want to look out for each other, and that's part of the thing because it's in retrospect. So let me go back to this trial. So the
Mhm.
trial's in the Masonic home. You walk in. Tell everybody how you were clad.
So and it goes to what my defense or my testimony was going to be. I went there in my full service blues uniform as a what I wore as a command master chief. Uh, and I even say in my opening statement, this is why I'm dressed this way, and it goes to the nature of these charges. It goes to the nature of what you're trying to basically quell and quash, and it will come out in this trial. The points that I'm making, and essentially in support of the Constitution and the First Amendment, is, I told them in the opening statement, I asked them, I said, anybody on this commission serve in the military? A couple of guys raised their hands. I said, did anybody here serve in law enforcement or in the legal system? A couple of guys raised their hands. And I had a copy of the Constitution with me there. And I said, well, gentlemen, you took the same oath I did. Same oath. And that's to support and defend that Constitution. You cannot be a law enforcement officer and you cannot be in the military and not support that Constitution. Right. I explained to them, as much as I hate it when somebody burns the American flag, I don't like it. I don't think it's right. However, and everything I'm saying is what I said in my testimony, my opening statement. However, that's what I served 25 years for. That's what I went to war for.
People hate it when I say that when they were talking about flags burn or kneel. It's like, I don't have to like it, but that's why people fight.
You have to, and that's what I told these guys. You don't have to like it. I don't like it, but you got to let it happen because you took the damn oath to support support that action. And that's what I told them. I said, when I see it, I hate it, but I also applaud that person because you know what? They got to do that because of what I did and because of what these members of the commission did. Yeah. They supported, they took an oath, and that oath never expires. Yeah. You have that oath is on you till you die.
Yeah. So how many were on that commission? How many, when you walked in, how many were on the panel?
So there was the chairman, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people.
6 people.
So seven, I'm told, with the chairman, 7.
And are they a jury of sorts? Is it a majority, or how does that work?
So the way the digest is written, chapter 44 specifically of the Florida Masonic Digest, it's written out in there that when there is a Masonic trial, that you're supposed to have the members of the fraternity. Like if it's at a lodge, you're supposed to have members of your lodge in there witnessing all of this. And those members act as the jury. And then those members, they will act as a jury. They take a vote on whether you're guilty or not guilty. And then if you're guilty, those same members of the jury, they're supposed to lay out what your sentence is. I had no members of a lodge of any sort in there. It was just the commission. This commission is appointed by the Grand Master, the chairman, and then the members of the commission. And then there's another person sitting in there, and I don't give a crap. His name's Patrick Ferguson. He's the vice chairman of Florida's Grand Lodge Penal Affairs Committee. Now, he sat off to the side, and he was also the administrative, I guess you'd say, designee of the Grand Master to oversee protocol on this trial. And he's the one, he said it in a text message that he and I had. He's like, I made the decision that I'm not allowing anybody in the courtroom. It's going to be a closed session. And I've talked to past Grand Masters and other penal affairs committee members, and they've supported and say that there's nothing wrong with that. The digest doesn't say that.
So you believe it contradicts the digest, is what you're saying?
Well, so when I brought it up, I said to the chairman, I said, Mr. Chairman, I object to what this is going on. I said, you're saying my witnesses can't be in the room. And I said, Chapter 44 doesn't address that. I said, you know, take a second to review Chapter 44. It's not in there. And then another member of the commission pipes up and says, well, it's not in there. That means he can do it. And I said, no, that's not what that means. You don't get to willy-nilly make up your own laws. You know, that's in the same vein that if Mr. Ferguson wanted to say, nobody with green shirts are allowed in the courtroom. You can't do that. That's just preposterous. Right. But that's what they were doing, and that's what the way they supported it. They say, well, it's not in a digest, so we're gonna do it anyways. It's like, well, where's my jury and my peers? You know?
Yeah. So from start to end, how long did this trial take?
3 hours.
3 hours. So was there a time from after the opening and closing statements? Was there a lull for a decision to make? What was
so they had it was basically in 3 sections in that 3 hour period. So they had the opening, and there's a lot of administrative housekeeping things that go in the opening. And I didn't include that in any of my audios that I uploaded to Facebook. But there's things that, you know, they read the charges, and they read, they do the Pledge of Allegiance, they do an invocation, they do all those kind of housekeeping things. Right. And then once they get all that out of the way, then they call on me if I would like to give an opening statement. So then I give my opening statement, and from that opening statement, it goes into what is supposed to be Q&A from the commission to me and back and forth. Right. That first section, once that was done, they took a recess between that opening and my first witness. Then they had a section of I had 4 witnesses. They had a section for those 4 witnesses. After the 4 witnesses, then they went into another recess to do deliberation. And when they called us back in at that point is when they read the verdict and my sentence all right then.
So obviously from a Florida Mason, it kind of hit this podcast radar. We've had countless emails, countless stuff come in, and we look at a lot of things, and there's stuff that comes in. We're like, I don't know if we can corroborate that. We're really not going to talk about that. There's all sorts of things, and so at the end of the day, even if somebody sometimes is a turd, if they're a Mason, they're a Mason. You need to do the right thing. So, my question, this, from my perspective, it seems like what may be going on in Florida is eerily similar to what happened a couple of years ago in Texas. There was a lot of, I'll just say, disruption. So let me fast forward. I was recently at the Grand Lodge of Texas on an assignment, and it's unfortunate that fires burn, so to speak. It's probably the wrong time to be talking about fires in the United States, but the fires burn. But out of that, some really good things. The unity in Texas on this visit was absolutely unbelievable. And I wonder if what Florida is going through right now is this some sort of a similar type thing, and if it is, my hope, speaking for me, my hope is that that somehow gets resolved like it did at Texas, and in Texas, what we refer to as the Grand West, the voting,
Yep.
the Grand West solved the problem. So, if I understand right, the your annual communication in Florida is in May.
May, that's correct.
So, if the problems, what we information we get here, if they are as grand as they once were in some other jurisdictions, do you anticipate the Grand West? Do you anticipate the attendance at this annual communication in May of 2025 to be a record attendance?
Well, I will tell you this. And if if I was clairvoyant, had the crystal ball, of course,
Right.
we'd all know. But
Sure.
things that I've been seeing and hearing, um, here's an indicator in my mind that it's already gotten bigger. There was a message sent out across the state. This is going to be in Orlando, and it's in a pretty popular area of Orlando on International Drive. The hotel is called the Rosen, and that's a really nice place. It's a
The
big
Rosen Shingle
hotel.
Creek,
What's that?
the Rosen Creek Shingle.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
So, but the one indicator that leads me to believe that it's going to be bigger is they've already taken another hotel, an Overflow Hotel. They're already promoting that and pushing it out
Rosen's
there.
huge, by the way.
So I think that yeah, it is big place. I think just with that alone, I've never seen a personally seen or heard of an overflow hotel for Grand Lodge. But there is one this coming year, and I kind of think that it's probably because they're seeing registration numbers. The other thing is too, my personal feeling, I believe that this will be a heavily attended uh, Grand Lodge. The thing is, it doesn't necessarily change the vote because here in Florida, the only people that have a vote in Grand Lodge is any living past Grand Master that's in attendance, and then out of all the lodges in the state of Florida, it's only the dais off the top three, your master and the two wardens. So
So a past master in Florida has no vote.
no vote.
That is
Nope.
fascinating.
Yeah. So we have 290, I think, lodges in Florida. So there's potentially, 290 times
Times
three, and then
three.
you have however many past Grand Masters there. And the thing is that you can figure out the total possible votes. But like in years past, there's people that don't show up. There's some lodges that don't attend that don't have the funds to travel or whatever, they don't attend. So those votes don't go. But yeah, that's a lot of votes, and it's limited on who has them.
That's fascinating on the vote. That added some color because I was unaware how that worked. Jurisdictions I'm aware of, past masters vote, and the top three chairs.
Yeah.
Well, that's fascinating. That changes. So yeah, you could have, to your point, you could have 3,000 people show up to the annual communication, but only 290 times three plus some grand masters
Yeah.
max have a vote. Fair?
Right. So that's what we're trying to, and I say we're because since the trial, I have basically become a member of the resistance. No surprise there on anybody's end, I'm sure. But the resistance, I say we're trying to put the word out there and beat the drums of, we need to clean house, and we have people waiting that are ready to go. And interestingly enough, we have a candidate, which I'm sure you're aware of, and he has things ready to go in place on day one. And one of them, what he communicated to me directly, one of them is he has legislation that he plans to put in there to make a big difference. I won't go into details, but
Right. I
make a
think that's
big
fair.
difference in Grand Lodge powers and authorities.
Yeah. Yeah. You're basically a checks and balances.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is
No,
the
I
way it
think that's
should
fair.
be. It's
Sure.
the way it should
Absolutely.
be.
Yeah. I think most reasonable people would want a checks and balances in the leadership, right? It keeps from tyranny, things like that
Yeah.
happening.
And the
So
way it is now, anybody questions this guy or any of his people, you're going to end up, being on the outside looking in.
yeah.
It's just, you can't question them. It's
So the
ridiculous.
last I knew, there were somewhere between 25 and 30 Masons that are under Masonic charges for this violation of this social media type deal. Is that are you hearing a different number?
So I'm not privy to those numbers. I've heard the same thing. I've heard as high as 50. I've heard 25, 26
Yeah. So I have
numbers.
I have in my possession over 20 of the actual Masonic charges. I've read all of them.
Oh, okay. Well,
So, but I haven't heard 50, but I knew I didn't have some and I didn't have yours. So that
oh,
adds
okay.
to the pile. So all very similar. Some of them seem to be the charges seem to be stemming from a post before the gag order.
Like
So
mine.
right. So there were some kind of interesting things there. I don't claim to know Florida law. I talk about the facts, and the facts are, good luck, right? So push all this to the side. So currently you're under an indefinite suspension,
That's
right? And
correct.
if new regime comes in tomorrow, they can tap the magic wand and reinstate you. So
Sure.
push that to that. As a human, I'm just asking you now as a human. You're Mason for 35 years, right? Very involved. How are you emotionally now? I mean,
Well,
so you had a big part of your life pop from you. What, where you at?
yeah. I mean, so, when I got hit with the charges, I was actually preparing to, as you know, most lodges around the country, they do their installations in January timeframe,
Hmm.
and my lodge is no different. And back in October timeframe or so, we were having a hard time, our membership, with getting somebody to step up to be secretary.
Right,
I was the secretary of my lodge for 3 years back in like 2008 to like
right,
2011. I was like, you know what the hell? I mean, I'm basically retired. I said, I'll do it,
yeah,
So I was preparing to go in to become secretary this month. And of course, now when the charges hit, and now you can't do any of that stuff because you have pending charges. And so it kind of threw our lodge for a loop. They had to scramble to see if they could find somebody else. So it disrupts certain things, because these guys in Grand Lodge, they operate in a vacuum.
right,
They don't explore, they don't ask questions. Walt Whitman said, be curious, not judgmental. And these
right,
guys, none of them are curious. None of them pick up the phone. So they're operating in a vacuum. So all of those decisions affect, little lodges and whatnot. But me personally, I was like, this is ridiculous. I mean, bizarro. I don't understand why we're wasting the craft's resources. Um, but hey, whatever, we'll go through the motions. And me personally, how I'm feeling about it, I don't like it. It's frustrating. It doesn't change me in being a Mason and who I am as a Mason. It doesn't change my record. It doesn't change that bio that you have. It
right.
doesn't change the history I have. Um, in my opinion, all it did was, stiffens my resolve, makes me, more dangerous person for these guys up there at Grand Lodge. And I'm frustrated personally for me. However, I'm not that terribly upset about it for me. What I am upset about is what these guys are doing to my fraternity in the state of Florida. And I'm upset about them, doing a witch hunt and persecuting my brothers out there that basically didn't do anything either. And it's just, you know what? All right, that's fine. I'm going to end up becoming an advocate for this. And like I said, I'm excited about it. I'm excited about going toe to toe with these guys. And the more that I get involved and the more that I dig in to the mess that's going on, the more I'm hearing, and it's like, holy cow! I mean, there's a lot more layers to this onion than just me. And I mean, there's some serious rumors, some serious accusations going on that I hope to God there's no truth to them, but
Yeah,
if there is, then
we probably have heard a lot of the same accusations in you, and so here we are respectful on accusations. We just don't go that direction. We do what we call receipts. If we have receipts, we can drop
right,
it that way because I think as our obligation to humans, forget Masons, as humans, you don't want to run with the rumors. You want to go with what you
right.
know, and I appreciate you taking the time out, to talk to us and just what I guess there's a lot of layers for those listening Masons. One, they never know how a trial works, and
Right.
it's not a. This isn't an episode, I think you might agree. This isn't an episode of hey, let's feel sorry for Steve. This is an episode of hey, this is what's going on,
Yeah.
and you should know how it works. So if you're in this situation, it's a better understanding, right? It's as much of a resource as it is a terrible story.
Yeah, I tell you, Brian, I don't want anybody feeling sorry for me. I don't feel
Right.
sorry for me.
Yes, sir.
Like I said, nothing. This baloney with this trial and this verdict, that has not changed anything. In fact, when the trial was over, Mr. Ferguson came up to me and he's like, "I want your dues card right then." So I handed him my dues card. Here you go. And then he says, "I want them all." I said, "No, you're not getting them all." And he goes, "Well, you can't belong to these other organizations." And I said, "Oh yeah, I can." I said, number one, I'm still a Mason. I'm not just in good stand. I'm a suspended Mason. Now that doesn't mean I can go to other organizations in Florida. Obviously, I can't. But I told him, I said, man, I'm a Mason in good standing in a couple of other jurisdictions, grand jurisdictions. And of course, he wanted to know what states they were, and I said, I didn't know that. I didn't say they were states. They may not necessarily be states. So not every Grand Lodge doesn't have the authority of other Grand Lodges.
Right. Well, and
So
the sovereignty in general is great. There's a lot of reasons for that, and again, it's not to feel sorry for Steve, but man,
no, not at all,
it
not at
sucks for.
all.
Listen, I think it sucks for you, man. And just as a human, I hate that I know what masonry means to me, and to have it plucked from me would it would be annoying, right? It would be
Yeah,
sad, but it would also trigger that third emotion of anger for me. So, if something ever happened and heaven forbid it was taken, doesn't stop me from talking, right?
yeah. My true brothers are still my true brothers.
Right, right.
When times get tough and all, you always know who your true friends are and your stuff
Yeah,
like that. And I do, and nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. I just can't go sit in an active lodge with them. That's all.
right. Well, no more green beans for you, my friends. So hey, Steve, thanks for joining the Old Fashioned Masonic podcast and telling your story, sir.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.